I'm not a lawyer, but this is the day 7 trial recap for Karen Reed. So the next couple of witnesses really start to lay out what exactly happened the night before John was found outside in the snow. It starts with this guy whose name is Michael Camarano. He's a friend of John's, and with kids the same age, John and Michael would basically hang out every Friday night. So on January 28th, 2022, which was a Friday night, Michael and John make plans to go to a bar called McCarthy's. And once they get there, they are joined by another friend that they called, who is Kurt Roberts, as well as Karen Reed. But over the course of the night, something happens that causes Michael to leave a little early.
Mr. Camarano, with regard to your statement in the text as far as leaving now, where were you leaving and where were you going to?
Leaving my house, going to John's house.
Mr. O'Keefe, from that video on the screen there, was walking to the car. Did you happen to notice how he was dressed? Was Mr. O'Keefe someone that would typically wear a coat?
No. That is me, and that is John.
Do you recall what you were drinking or what John was drinking that night?
Beer. Kurt?
So in addition to yourself and Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. Roberts has now joined your group?
Correct.
If you could pause there, please.
Karen Reed?
Now, with reference to Ms. Reed, what, if anything, do you recall her drinking during your time that you were both at C.F. McCarthy's at?
She was drinking out of a glass. I received a phone call that my son was hit in the face with a hockey stick and he lost his tooth. I went to go get him.
From the group that you were with, as far as yourself, Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Reed, and Mr. Roberts, who, if anyone, left first?
I believe Kurt.
And what, if any, indication did they give to you as far as where they were going, or what were their intentions for the rest of the evening?
They were heading either across the street or to the hillside.
And when you say across the street, what, if anything, was across the street?
There's another bar room.
Is that the Waterfall?
Waterfall, yes.
You leave, you get your son, you pick up the daughter at Mr. O'Keefe's house, and then you go home, correct?
Correct. 5:36 a.m.
And what was it that woke you up, if you know?
Phones ringing. I see a lot of missed calls, a bunch of missed calls from Karen, and missed calls from my wife's work.
His wife is a nurse, if you're wondering.
I pick up the phone and call my wife. She tells me that John didn't come home last night. She said she's received phone calls from
whom?
Karen. I realize that Kaylee's home alone, so I throw some clothes on, clean the car off real quick, and get in the car and go. Paul had called me. Paul O'Keefe, John's brother.
He informed you that John had passed?
Yes.
So you took Kaylee to the house on Meadows Ave to be with the family, is that correct?
Yes.
Karen's team doesn't spend a ton of time on cross-examination, but her attorney does highlight what Michael observed about Karen and John's relationship.
So you got to know them not just individually, but as a couple together, correct?
Yes.
You saw them on most Friday nights, right?
Correct. No, I did hear him complain about like when Karen would buy like very nice things for the kids, like he wouldn't like that, stuff like that, or take the kids to get their nails done or something like that.
So maybe spoiling the children.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yes.
Certainly nothing to suggest that there was any abuse or anything like that. It was just a matter of fact.
Correct. Correct.
You described earlier at another hearing, you described a situation in which Ms. Reed got a very expensive sweater for Mr. O'Keefe's niece.
Correct.
And Mr. O'Keefe's response was, "Boy, I wish he hadn't done that. That's spoiling that little girl."
Yes.
All right. And on the day before Mr. O'Keefe's passing, would you describe their interactions to be normal and caring and affectionate?
Yes.
And then Michael's wife, Catherine Camarano, is called next to the stand. She's the nurse, so she was at work when Karen called her to say John was missing.
Probably between 4 and 5. She was just screaming, "Where's Mike? Where's Mike?" At some point I hung up. I called my husband, like, I don't know, probably it felt like 100 times. I called either Karen's phone or Kaylee's phone back. I texted John, I think, twice. And then I could, whoever's phone I called, I could hear Jen in the background, that someone had called Jen too. Jen McCabe, she was one of Madeline's basketball coaches, so I know her voice. I was just saying to her, is everybody okay? And she said they're gonna go out looking for him. I think she said they were gonna go out looking, or she went out, she's gonna go out. No one knows where he is. And then I think I like hung up with her. I felt like it was just like a lot of like screaming, like he's not home. I talked to Carrie Roberts in the morning at some point. She said that I think that he was going to the hospital, and then I called my husband and told him that Kaylee was home alone and that he should go get her because she was at the house alone.
Again, another short cross from Karen's defense team, and then Kurt Roberts is called. Remember, Kurt is the third person that went to the bar with John O'Keefe and Michael Camarano, and he is also the husband of Carrie Roberts. And Carrie is one of the women that helped Karen search for John O'Keefe the morning he was found.
A voice on my wife's phone was yelling, like screaming, frantic. It wasn't, and that woke me up. So I asked, what is that? Yes, I did. It was Karen Reed. My wife gets up. She starts getting crazy and then putting her clothes on and running out. I'm telling her not to go because the weather was pretty bad at that point. And of course, she goes, John's missing, and I got to go. I don't know exactly what she said, where she was going. She called me on the phone. I forget. I can't really recall exact times now. They tell me that they found John. He's in the ambulance. They bring him to the hospital, and she was going to get Mr. and Mrs. O'Keefe, John's parents.
So after hanging out at McCarthy's, John and Karen walk over to another bar called the Waterfall. The next witness is the bartender from the Waterfall, and Karen's defense team asks her about her familiarity with the Albert family.
Prior to being a bartender at the Waterfall, did you have another bartending job somewhere else?
I've worked at a couple places, a couple in Canton.
And you had, I believe, testified on direct examination that you either know or know of the Albert family, correct? You would agree with me that they are a well-known family in the town of Canton?
I would say yes.
Okay. And how many members of the Albert family do you know either personally or professionally? And by professionally, I mean, obviously, you're a bartender, and personally means that you know them in some other way.
5 of them. Brian Alberts, Chris Alberts. I can't remember their wives' names at the moment.
You know their wives by face?
Yeah, and then Brian's daughter, Caitlin. She's closer to my age. She's younger than me.
You also mentioned that you had seen somebody named Brian Higgins there, correct?
Correct.
At some point in the past, when he'd been in the bar, for some reason you knew his name, Brian Higgins.
Yes.
John O'Keefe as a prior customer in the bar, correct?
Correct.
And that particular night, John appeared to be in a good mood. Would you agree?
Yes.
Nobody really seemed highly intoxicated to you, correct?
No.
The last two witnesses are Nicholas Kolakitas and his wife. The two of them were at a basketball game for their daughter, and after the game, some of the parents from the team decided to go to the Waterfall to eat. And two of those parents were Jennifer McCabe and her husband.
Went to the Waterfall. I got there right around 9-ish, a little bit before 9 o'clock. So I walked in, it was a large table, probably about 8 to 10 feet long. In addition to Jen and Matt McCabe, there was Jen's sister, Nicole Albert, her husband, Brian Albert, Brian's brother, Chris Albert, and his wife, Julie. And there were others that I was just introduced to for the first time. So I don't remember their name, I don't recall their names, but there were others at the table as well.
At some point following that, was there anyone else that you knew or aware of that came into the bar?
Shortly before 11, or right around 11, it was John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. She was holding a glass with a clear liquid. I don't know what was in there, but I don't know if it was water or alcoholic drink, but I don't know. Generally, it was a fun atmosphere. There was a live band. Everybody was in a good mood, I think.
Now, towards the end of the night, what, if any, discussion did you observe or were you a part of as far as sort of anywhere people were going afterwards?
One was 2 D&Es, which was across the street next to CF McCarthy's, and the other one was 34 Fairview Road.
Yourself and your wife, did either of you go to Fairview Road that night?
We did not.
I think everything started wrapping up around midnight. So I think everybody was having a really good time. So there was conversation first about where could people go, and there was talk about maybe going across the street to the pizza place. Then I think there was discussion about, Jen McCabe brought up, let's go to my sister's house. I think it was said out loud, like, hey, anybody wants to go, we can go to my sister's on Fairview. We did not go. I actually said to him, there's no way we're going anywhere. We're going home. My husband, yeah. I see Karen with John, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I thought she was going with Jen. And that's just what made me notice it. It was that the whole, like, Jen wanting Karen to go with her, and then all of a sudden I see Karen with John. I just thought, it was just like, oh, so it made me notice it.
All right, day 8 and 9. I got to go watch it.